What is the most important book ever to be gifted to mankind? Well, as an evangelical Christian, I suppose I should say the Bible, and technically that's true. But the authors of the Bible were inspired by the Holy Spirit and thus have an unfair advantage. So we're going to put that off to a separate category and just talk about every other book that was ever created. And which is the most important book? Which book, more than any other, has risen Western civilizations to its greatest heights? Is it the Iliad? Is it Beowulf? Is it A Tale of Two Cities? Is it Pride and Prejudice? Is it Moby Dick? Is it The Sun Also Rises? What book is it? What is the greatest book of all time? Well, the answer is not even open to argument because it's obviously true. The greatest book of all time is the the Star Trek Starfleet Technical Manual, published in 1975, compiled by Franz Joseph. And it's a brilliant book. It really is. Not the same character, not the same copy I had as a kid, but I've been able to replace the one I had as a kid. I don't know what happened to it. Perhaps my younger brother made off with it when he moved away. I don't know. But it's a great book, and let's take a look at what's in it. Starfleet Technical Manual, the Training Command, Starfleet Command. It starts off with a really fun thing, a foreword, a memo from the United States military forces that pretty much says this was accidentally transmitted to us from the future. So this is actual Star Trek stuff, and I love that little conceit. We get the Articles of the Confederation. How does the Articles of the Federation? So the United Federation of Planets. How does their government work? Well, here is what essentially is their constitution. A little later on, we get things like the Starfleet chain of command. Neat little flowcharts. Who doesn't love a good flowchart? If you're a proper Starfleet, Star Trek nerd, then you love these flowcharts. Moving on a little farther, we have the layout of the Starfleet headquarters. There's their cadet parade ground, one deck over from their park in the swimming pool, the athletic field. We have rank insignia. So there's a captain, 2.5 stripes, so to speak. That's what Kirk had on his sleeve. Down through lieutenant, if you were an ensign, you didn't have anything. And then the little like insignia on their chests that actually told you whether they were command or a gold shirt, sciences and wore a blue shirt, or engineering and support services and wore a red shirt, which meant that you had a 90% chance of getting killed. Patterns for the uniforms, both the male and the lady. But here is where it gets epically cool. We get these little like diagrams of the heavy cruiser class. This is the Constitution class. This is what the Enterprise was. You know, we're told what the ship's complement was. We're told like it's what its weaponry is. It's height and weight and breadth and all of that. We're told it's maximum safe cruising speed is warp 6, emergency speed is warp 8. It can go 18 years without refueling if it has to, but they were only on a 5-year mission. And then we get the names of the original ones with little double stars by the ones that were lost in battle. And 1 star by the one that's the class ship. That's the first one that was built and commissioned, was the Constitution. Double stars, like the Constellation, was destroyed in the episode The Doomsday Machine. The Intrepid was destroyed in the Immunity Syndrome, I think it was. The one with the giant amoeba that Spock eventually had to fly a shuttlecraft into to study. And the names of other classes that will eventually be built by Starfleet. There's plans for building a whole ton of Constitution class ships. And next, and this was cool, because remember, this is 1975. We had the original series. We had the animated series, which showed a few unusual ships, um, but really mostly just showed the Enterprise. You know, we got the James Blish short story adaptations of the television episodes, and we were starting to get some original novels, which were cool. But this is the first time we see other Federation ships is here in this, and this was used at least by Joe Haldeman when he wrote two Star Trek novels in the late '70s. I could tell when I was reading these that he had referred to these. He has a destroyer show up in one of them, Planet of Judgment. He also has, we'll see in a minute, the bridge. Um, he has Spock and another scientist character go down to the labs a deck or two below the bridge via a gangway off the bridge. We're going to see that in a moment. So he was obviously referring to these when he was researching those novels, which was cool. You know, in my mind, all of this is canon. Um, we can see the destroyers are named after military figures or gods of wars. There's a USS Ares, there's a USS Lucifer, a USS Mars, um, you know, and more military leaders down here. Everything from Ajax from the Greece to Cochise from the Native Americans, Nelson from the British Navy. There should be a USS Nelson, of course. The guy was an epic commander. An El Cid, a Drake, Hector, Geronimo. I just love the choice of names for the destroyer class. Then we have the Scout class, which is pretty much the same design as the destroyer. There's no secondary hull and just one warp nacelle. We can see it has a crew complement of 195, whereas destroyer had an even 200, and it only has one bank of phasers and no photon torpedoes. And I know from other sources that its sensors are ramped up because it is a scout. That's its job. It's go out and scout around for stuff. So it's given less weaponry and more sensors. So that's the scout vessel. And once again, we have cool names. The Crockett, I love that. The Cody, the Carson, grabbing mountain men scouts from American history. You know, the Bowie, the Bridger. Um, we have names from other sources as well. But, you know, once again, there should be a USS Crockett if you're going to have a scout ship. That makes perfect sense. A USS Bridger, a USS Carson. Um, I love the thought that went into these names. There's a USS Sacagawea, which is Juea. I think I'm saying the name wrong. I apologize for that. But that is the Native American lady who helped Lewis and Clark. So, cool choice of names. What do we have next? The transport tug. See, two warp nacelles, but instead of a secondary hull, it has a tow pad. Let's see, two banks of phasers. Cruises at warp 6, it can get around fine, a crew of 120. But what does it do? It tows, well, let's look at the names first. Galileo, Ptolemy, so it's like going to the old Greeks and other cultures for scientist characters. And this is what it does. It hauls these transport containers. So here is one that just carries like bulk goods and such. There's a refrigerated container. There's this one is dry bulk. This is probably what was carrying Quadro Triticale to the planet in the Trouble with Tribbles. I've just lost all geek cred because I am blanking on the name of that planet. So don't write me nasty letters because of that. You know, one for liquids. And here's the Starliner one, which has got several pages to show it because it's got multiple decks. You know, it's got, you know, a park. It's got the stateroom, several decks of staterooms, a theater, because I guess they're assuming it could take weeks. And even at warp 6, which used to be 6 times 6 times 6 the speed of light, it will sometimes take you weeks to get from one star to another. So more staterooms, a library lounge, a sick bay, of course, you know, maintenance and power. This thing can actually get along on warp speed on its own if it has to. I don't think it would want to, especially if it's a long way away from a planet, but if it had to in an emergency. Water tanks. and the front view and aft view. Just I love stuff like this. And a little blueprint, a diagram of the staterooms. And this was awesome. This is awesome. I have never seen these other than in the like Starfleet Battles board game that was based on this book. But dreadnoughts, if we ever go to war with the Klingons or the Romulans, you want some of these in your fleet because they are equipped with 5 banks of phasers and 2 banks of photon torpedoes. You've got a crew of 500. You can go to warp 8 cruising speed and warp 10 emergency speed. These things are really amped up and solidly built. 3 warp nacelles. So these are the epic battleships if we ever need them. Names like the Affiliation, the Alliance, the Corporation, the Star Empire. There is a novel by there's a novel about the Dreadnought. It's called Dreadnought. Is that by Diane Carey? I don't know. I think it's somebody else. I'm sorry, I can't remember. It's actually a fun novel where one of these is built, and they use the name Star Empire. Then we have our shuttlecraft. So the plans of the shuttlecraft, the official colors of the shuttlecraft. I love that. The layout of the inside. And we have diagrams of the standard design of stateroom for starships. So if you were an officer like Kirk, this is the layout of your stateroom. If you're just like an ensign who works in engineering or in the biology lab or whatever, then you're sharing the room with someone else, and this is the layout of your stateroom. Hopefully the Andorian sharing the stateroom with you doesn't snore. That would be annoying. Here is one of the most epic things I ever saw in my life when I got this as a teenager. A layout of the bridge. Coming in from the turbo elevator in the back here, it says what all the stations were. We knew what most of them were. Scotty usually sits in the engineering station when he's on the bridge. We have helm and navigation and the captain. We have, the science station and the communication station where Spock and Uhura sat. It never really is fully explained what the rest are. But there's like a navigation station, a defense and weapons station, a defense subsystems monitor, an environmental, what is the ESSM? It's Engineering Subsystems Monitor. And then the environmental station, and then the engineering station. So it actually identifies what all this is for. And it has stuff we don't see in the TV show because of budget. The kick-out panels there so you can get into the corridor that goes around the outside of the bridge, or you just go through this exit that's up by the view screen. And then you can get around both to the toilet if you need to go. So if you're doing an 8-hour shift on the bridge, there is a convenient place for you to go. It's probably Chekhov would be telling you that Russians invented the toilet. And a gangway, so if the elevators are out, that's how you get down. It makes you wonder, in the episode Space Seed, where Khan took over the ship and isolated the bridge by turning off the elevator, why didn't they just go down through the gangway? Well, first, it was because nobody had thought of it yet in terms of real life, but it's really not that much of a stretch to think that there is a way of isolating the bridge. If there were ever a biological emergency, if Klingons ever managed to beam aboard and take over the bridge, you'd have a way of cutting it off from the rest of the ship, a security way. And Khan, because of his superior intelligence, managed to tap into that and cut the bridge off completely. So he would have, prevented either exit from using. And in those kick-out panels, maybe there is a way of locking them off. And that's not that much of a stretch. So there you go. We can still keep everything within continuity, can't we? Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. A sideways view of the bridge. I mean, who doesn't love this? If you're a Star Trek geek and you saw this for the first time in the 70s, you are just completely just ecstatic over it. The command area with Kirk's chair and Sulu and Chekhov's spots. A close-up of those chairs. Here's Chekhov's or Sulu's buttons. See, so that's cool. Chekhov's buttons. It's navigation station. He has some stuff that Sulu doesn't have. Kirk's chairs, intercom, the command panel intercom. the vital functions override panel, command functions panel. If he had to signal a red alert or something, he could do it with that. And that little like sort of screen thing in between Kirk, in between the helmsman and the navigator, there that is with their old like non-digital chronometer. Um, there's the security section. These force fields to hold off. Geez, they needed a big bridge. How often did Scotty and others get into drunken brawls while on leave? More epic stuff. There's the Type 1 phaser. So if you ever need to dematerialize someone with a Type 1 phaser, make sure you're within 10 meters. That's the range of it. And if you ever set it to overload, to use it as a hand grenade, make sure you've got a good arm because it'll blow up everything within 40 meters. We had hand phaser number 2, and it shows that what happens is you insert a hand phaser number 1 into the bigger one with a bigger power pack, and that's how that works. And I'm not sure I ever fully realized that until I saw this for the first time. And the increased range it gives it for all the different functions. Something we never saw, but Joe Haldeman did use it in his book, The Planet of Judgment, is ray guns. And I don't know why ray guns were put in here. Was there a passing reference to ray guns in an episode that I'm forgetting about? It's not impossible. And then there is things like the tricorder and what all its devices do. The layout of the controls console. The layout of just different bridge stations. Yeah, this is Spock's station. See, there's his viewer, and there's all the various controls he has. The tricorder, a little tricorder schematic. There is where the Federation is in relation to the rest of the galaxy. Navigation aids. Another map. Once again, there's the United Federation. There's the Klingons on one side, the Romulans on another. There towards where it's 000 degrees is probably about where the Enterprise once tried to leave the galaxy and ran into that force field that surrounds the galaxy. Once again, where all the star bases are in relation to major planets. The Enterprise gets around because it was nearby when the Intrepid was lost, and over there on the other side of Federation space where the Constellation was lost. There's where the Gorns attacked. There's the first Federation. They raced from the Corbomite maneuver. They didn't own a lot of territory, even though they had a really big ship. Once again, planets of the Federation. There's the medical section. So there's sick bay. There's the medical tricorder. That heartbeat reader that we saw in the episode Court Martial. There's some of McCoy's equipment. That spray applicator. His medical scanner. I believe that's the one that was made out of a salt shaker in real life. The anabolic protoplaster, which was plaster, which was referred to at least once when McCoy was doing an emergency first aid on somebody. Surgical scalpels. They work kind of like lasers, I think. We have the universal translator that was used in the Gorn episode, Arena. Other than that, everybody, no matter where they went, seemed to speak English, and it was never a problem. The engineering section on the bridge. And then the engineering section itself, which is in the back of the saucer. You control the warp engines from there, but it's like where the impulse engines are located. So, some main propulsion. I don't know why, if somebody doesn't use this to just build a warp engine. The transporter room. We are, apparently they're interconnected enough to where if one breaks, they all break. because it turns out there's like 4 personal transporters on board and a cargo transporter and a 22-man emergency transporter. But whenever one went out, they seemed to all be down. The transporter's out, sir. We can't save Captain Kirk. Well, darn. Can't you use the one next door? Nope, nope, nope. That's broken too. There's our emergency transporter, which is a great idea. Of course, a ship would have that. In the book World Without End, in the Joe Haldeman book, he has them using this. The cargo transporter, the hangar deck, where our shuttlecraft go. We have Spock's Vulcan lyre, his musical instrument. We see him playing it a few times. We have the 3D chess rules, or 3D chess, and it actually does have some rules here for how to play it. Use those extra little boards that come in. I don't know if the game actually makes sense, but there it is. So, the greatest book. I would spend hours looking through this as a geeky teenager, and I'm perfectly capable of spending hours looking through it again as a geeky adult. This was a wonderful book, especially when it came out at a time where we weren't getting a lot of new Star Trek material. I just love this book. And I also have the Star Trek blueprints, which have like every deck of the Enterprise laid out. It's just magnificent. It's beautiful. I love it. I now know how to get from the transporter room on deck 7 to the bridge. And if that ever comes up in real life, I'm good to go. And I'm just eagerly awaiting for that to happen. If the Enterprise wants to do some more time traveling, I'm here anytime. And that is, once again, the greatest book ever created by mankind. Thank you for listening.